Most people think their parents handed them a financial head start, but the habits drilled into you at every dinner table are quietly bleeding your future dry. The system changed. The advice did not. I'm not here to disrespect your parents. They were not wrong. They passed down what worked for their world. But here's what is actually happening. The economic rules that made those habits smart have been replaced entirely. And every single day you keep running their playbook, a quiet cost accumulates in the background, invisible, silent, compounding. Today we break down the 5 financial habits that felt like wisdom and are now actively working against you. Not because your parents failed you, but because the game shifted beneath your feet without anyone sending you an update. These are not small adjustments. These are structural breaks, and the people who see them first are the ones who win. Habit 1, save money in a savings account. Your parents told you to save, and that part is absolutely right. The broken part is where most standard savings accounts today pay you less than 1% annually on your balance. Meanwhile, inflation is running at 3 to 4% per year. Here's what is actually happening. Your savings account is not holding your money. It is slowly eroding it while the balance stays exactly the same on your screen. Every year you park money in a low-yield account, you're losing purchasing power invisibly. You feel safe. The number looks stable. But the quiet drain runs in the background like a subscription you never signed up for. The old world your parents lived in had savings accounts yielding 5 to 6% annually. That was a legitimate wealth-building instrument. Today, it is psychological comfort with a financial penalty built directly into the mechanism underneath the surface. The system doing this to you is called yield suppression. Central banks kept interest rates artificially low for decades. The savings account stayed, the yield disappeared, the name did not change. The function completely did. That gap is costing you daily. Your parents did not teach you the wrong discipline. They taught you the right discipline into the wrong instrument. Saving aggressively still matters, but the vehicle your money sits in now determines whether you're quietly building or quietly bleeding. Habit 2, stay loyal to one employer. Your parents stayed at one company for 30 years. They received a pension, a plaque, a gold watch. They told you loyalty pays, and for their generation, that was genuinely true. The broken part is that the pension system has been quietly dismantled and replaced with a structure that now penalizes tenure. Employees who stay at one company for more than 2 years earn on average 50% less over their lifetime. 50% less. That is not a rounding error. That is not a marginal difference. That is the compounded result of something called salary anchoring, the single most expensive invisible mechanism operating in the modern employment system right now. Here's how salary anchoring works. When you stay at a company, your raises are calculated as a small percentage of your current salary, typically 2 to 4% annually. You're being raised off a cap floor every year. When you move to a new employer, you reset entirely to market rate. You negotiate from external leverage, not from internal loyalty. The market rate is almost always significantly higher than the raise your current employer is willing to offer you. Your parents receive genuine loyalty premiums, healthcare, pension contributions, job security guarantees. Companies bought their tenure with real compensation packages. That contract has been dissolved. The expectation of loyalty stayed. The financial reward for it was quietly removed. The work ethic your parents gave you is still a genuine asset. The direction you pointed matters more than it ever has. Loyalty to your own growth and skill development is the updated version of this habit, not loyalty to an employer's ceiling. Habit 3, avoid debt at all costs. Your parents watched their parents lose everything in debt spirals and pass that fear down, like financial scripture. Avoid debt, pay cash. If you cannot afford it, you simply do not buy it. That mindset was protective in a world where most available debt was consumer debt, high interest, predatory, consumption-based. The broken part is applying that blunt rule to a world that now includes low-rate productive leverage on appreciating assets. Here is what is actually happening. Not all debt is equal. Refusing to use leverage entirely in a low-rate environment means you're letting inflation erode your capital while others use cheap borrowed money to acquire assets that appreciate over time. The mechanism doing this to you is called the cost of opportunity avoidance. When you refuse debt entirely, you also refuse the compounding returns that strategically leveraged investment can generate over a 10 or 20-year time horizon. A paid-off car depreciates to zero. A leveraged rental property generates monthly cash flow while appreciating in value over time. Your parents chose safety because safety was rational in their environment. The market now quietly taxes that same choice. The fear your parents gave you applies directly to consumer debt credit cards, finance furniture, lifestyle loans. That fear is still completely correct. The error is extending it to cover productive leverage on cash-generating, appreciating assets. They are different instruments entirely. Understanding the difference between liability debt and asset debt is the single financial concept that separates people who stay financially flat from people who quietly build. Your parents had half the map. The second half was never passed down to you. Habit 4, a degree equals financial security. This one is the most emotionally loaded of all 5. Your parents believed in education as the universal key to stable income. And for decades, it delivered exactly what they promised you it would. The broken part is not education itself. The broken part is the assumption baked into the habit that the credential alone guarantees the outcome, that the certificate is the asset, that completing the degree is the same as achieving the result. Here's what is actually happening. Average student loan debt in the United States now exceeds $30,000. In many fields, the salary premium attached to the degree no longer justifies the upfront cost or the years of opportunity foregone. The mechanism doing this is called credential inflation. When your parents graduated, a bachelor's degree was held by roughly 20% of the workforce. Today, that number exceeds 40%. When everyone has the key, the lock changes. The door moves. The economic system has been quietly repricing human capital for 2 decades. Skills and demonstrated real-world outcomes now carry premium value in the labor market. Credentials have become a floor, a minimum requirement that no longer provides genuine differentiation on its own. Your parents paid $5,000 for a degree that opened a door. You paid $60,000 for a door that now requires additional credentials, demonstrable skills, and proof of outcome before the room on the other side becomes accessible to you. This is not an argument against education. It is an argument against treating the credential as the strategy itself. The degree is a tool. The tools that generate premium income today are specific skills, specialized knowledge, and evidence of real-world application combined. The update to this habit is to map every dollar and every year of education directly to a specific high-demand skill outcome. If you cannot draw a direct line from the degree to a market value, the cost-benefit equation on that investment has broken habit. 5. Buy a house as soon as possible. Homeownership is the cornerstone of generational wealth. Your parents are not wrong about the asset class. The broken part is the timing assumption that has been embedded into the advice itself. Buy as soon as you can. Get on the ladder. Do not throw money away renting. That framing made complete sense when housing prices were 3 to 4 times the median annual income. That ratio no longer exists in most major markets. Here's what is actually happening. In the cities where economic opportunity is concentrated, housing prices have increased so far beyond income growth that early buying now locks young buyers into mortgages consuming 60 to 70% of their take-home income. The hidden system here is called affordability compression. The price-to-income ratio on homes in major markets has doubled in a single generation. The advice assumed a cost basis that has been structurally repriced out of existence for most entry-level buyers today. Your parents bought their first home when it cost roughly 3 times their annual income. In most major cities today, the entry-level home costs 7 to 10 times the median annual income. The ladder did not get taller. The first rung moved up. Buying too early in the wrong market at an unsustainable debt-to-income ratio does not build generational wealth. It eliminates financial flexibility, destroys monthly cash flow, and chains capital to an illiquid asset that may not appreciate in that specific market at all. The update to this habit is not to avoid homeownership. It is to remove the emotional urgency from the timing and replace it with financial precision. The house is still the destination. The route and timing determine whether it builds or quietly breaks you. So if 5 habits are broken, what do you actually do? The answer is not to discard everything your parents gave you. The discipline, the work ethic, the delayed gratification, those are the real inheritance. The instruments need updating, not the values. Save aggressively, but into high-yield savings accounts. index funds, or tax-advantaged vehicles that match or beat inflation. The behavior your parents modeled is still completely correct. The account type is the single variable that changes the entire outcome here. Move strategically in your career with skill accumulation as the explicit goal. Every 2 to 3 years, compare your market rate to your current compensation. The gap between those two numbers is money the system is quietly removing from your future. Use debt with precision. Consumer debt is still the exact trap your parents warned about. Productive leverage on appreciating cash-generating assets is a different mechanism entirely. Learning to distinguish between the two is worth more than most financial courses you can buy. Map education dollars directly to specific market outcomes before committing to spend them. Skills that solve expensive problems for businesses command premium income regardless of how the credential market is currently performing. The degree supports the skill. The skill generates the income. On housing, remove the guilt from renting and add financial precision to the buy decision. A renter who consistently invests the difference between rent and a mortgage payment into index funds over a decade often outperforms a buyer in a compressed market. The goals your parents had, stability, security, ownership, legacy, those goals are not broken. The exact sequence of steps and instruments they used to reach them have been disrupted by structural changes they could not have anticipated when they raised you. The people who are financially ahead of you right now are not working harder. They did not start with more advantages. They are simply operating by updated rules while the majority are still running code that was written for a different era entirely. Every year your savings sit in a standard account. You're losing 30 to 40% of real purchasing power over a decade. That is not a feel-bad statistic. That is a quiet extraction running continuously and invisibly in the background every single day. Every year you stay at a salary-anchored position out of loyalty to an employer who has not matched your market value, you are leaving $10,000 to $20,000 on the table. Compounded over a career, that gap becomes an uncrossable chasm. Every degree purchased without mapping it to a high-demand specific skill outcome burns tens of thousands in tuition, interest, and opportunity costs. Years of compounding returns redirected into a credential that did not produce the expected return on the original investment. Every mortgage entered too early at an unsustainable debt-to-income ratio eliminates the financial flexibility that would have allowed you to invest, move for opportunity, take career risks, or build emergency reserves before committing to an illiquid long-term asset position. These costs are invisible because they do not appear as losses on a statement. They show up as the gap between where you are and where people running updated rules have already reached. The invisible drain is always the most dangerous kind of all. The habits your parents gave you were not mistakes. They were correct solutions to a financial environment that has since been replaced. The loyalty, the saving, the education, the home ownership, the values underneath each habit are still completely load-bearing and valid today. What has to change is the exact execution. The instrument you save into, the employer relationship you maintain, the type of debt you're willing to use, the credential you pursue relative to the specific market outcome you are deliberately mapping toward. The update is not a rejection of your parents' wisdom. It is an application of their discipline to a system that has changed its rules without changing its name. The system looks familiar from the outside. The penalties inside it are entirely new. Most people will never make this update, not because they are incapable, because these habits were installed so early and reinforced by so many trusted voices that questioning them feels like betrayal rather than intelligence. That feeling is the final invisible trap. The most expensive financial decision you can make right now is not a bad investment or a single debt mistake. It is running yesterday's financial software on today's economic hardware. The code mismatch is completely silent. The cost it produces is not silent at all. You do not owe the old habits your loyalty, you owe your future self precision. The people who understand that stop leaking money they cannot see, stop anchoring careers they could break free from, and stop following a map drawn for a territory that no longer exists. Your parents gave you the foundation. The update is yours to install. The 5 habits are broken. The values underneath them are not. Take the discipline, change the instrument. The quiet financial independence they wanted for you is still achievable. The path looks different now.